All right, wonderful. Okay, so once again, I want to welcome you all. Let me give you an introduction of A Life of Peace, which is the sponsoring organization for the Doula House. We are a nonprofit organization and we've been around for the last 15 years, serving the communities at home in the US as well as abroad in different countries with holistic health and wellness education. So if this is your first time attending an event with A Life of Peace, again, welcome. And I do see a few familiar faces here, so, and some not familiar. So once again, welcome. And let me tell you a little bit about your presenter today. Okay. Morenike is a holds a master's in health and wellness with a concentration in human lactation. And she's also the executive chief officer and founder of Aquaba Wellness. And Aquaba means welcome if you're not familiar with that word Aquaba. So at Aquaba Wellness, it is an inclusive organization that is dedicated to providing education, support, and nurturing to families during their journey into parenthood. She has facilitated the first baby cafe in Savannah, Georgia, and she currently facilitates monthly new parent and baby meetups where she provides breastfeeding education and support, postpartum care tips, prenatal workshops, and infant safety demonstrations to the community. Morenike sits on the Georgia Breastfeeding Coalition Board, and she is a member of the National Perinatal Task Force as well as the Doula Access Working Group. She is also a Georgia representative of the Appalachian Breastfeeding Network. So with all of that, you know she's going to know what she's talking about today. So I hope that you all enjoy her. I have to say, personally, Morenike is also a holistic doula instructor with A Life of Peace as well as through her own organization. So she does host the holistic doula trainings in Savannah, Georgia, as well as online. She is also a Reiki practitioner as well as an energy healer. And she's also a meditation instructor. So she has a whole line of wellness services that she provides as well, in addition to being a wife and a mother of four beautiful daughters. So without further ado, Morenike, welcome, beautiful one. We're looking forward to hearing from you today.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Okugray, for that beautiful introduction. Um, and I'm looking forward to showing you all this PowerPoint so that you can learn about breastfeeding, and we will have questions at the end. So I don't have any more introduction. You took it off. Let's get started. So the objective today is to make sure that we go over the benefits of breastfeeding. You're going to learn the basics and dispel the myths of breastfeeding. I'm going to talk to you about what happens at each stage. You're going to be able to identify when breastfeeding is going well and when do you need to get help. So these are some of the myths that I like to go over. There's actually many more myths than this, but these are some of my favorites. So the first one is breastfeeding or chest feeding will cause my breast to sag. Actually, breastfeeding does not cause your breast to sag. Being pregnant makes your breast to sag, or it could be hereditary. The hormones that are emitted during pregnancy fill your breast and with milk, regardless of whether you decide to breastfeed or not. And that is what can cause them to have a little sag after pregnancy. Formula is the same as human milk. That is another myth. They are very different, and we're going to talk about their differences later on in the class. Feeding is painful for most breastfeeding parents, and breastfeeding should not be painful. So I want to make sure I say that, and you will hear me say that throughout the class. Your breast may be sore, but it should not be painful. It should feel like tugging. Newborns need water. Actually, breast milk is 88% water, so newborns do not need water. Small breasts do not make enough milk to nurse a baby. I've actually helped a mom with an A cup nurse twins, so size does not matter in the case of breastfeeding your baby. I won't have any breast milk until a few days after my baby's born. Actually, if you are past 14 weeks pregnant, you have breast milk in your breast. That's when your breasts start to develop something called colostrum. And this is my favorite myth because this one often keeps people from breastfeeding. I have to have a strict diet and drink milk in order to have milk. And you do not have to have a strict diet in order to breastfeed. You just want to make sure you eat when you're hungry, you drink when you're thirsty, you continue to take your prenatal vitamins, and remember that you're burning up about 500 calories per day when you're breastfeeding. So you just want to make sure that you eat healthy, more so for you, more than for the breast milk. Your baby is going to be able to get exactly what they need. But if you do not put healthy foods in your body, that will come from you. So just like if you're pregnant, if you don't take your prenatal vitamins and get in calcium, then those nutrition that the baby needs will actually come from your bones and your teeth. So it's very important that you eat healthy, not necessarily to have good breast milk, but to make sure that you stay healthy. These are some of the benefits of breastfeeding. And they're not just benefits for the baby, there's benefits for the breastfeeding parent as well. So for the baby, breastfeeding will decrease the risk of many long-term and short-term health problems such as allergies, asthma, ear infections, bacterial meningitis, respiratory infections, certain childhood lymphomas, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, as well as childhood obesity. And studies have shown that breastfed babies tend to have a higher IQ and a healthier immune system. And for the breastfeeding parent, it will decrease many diseases and illnesses such as breast cancer, ovarian cancers, and also endometrial cancer and osteoporosis. So this is what I talked about earlier as far as the differences between formula and breast milk. Even though formula can be used to feed your baby and can provide nutrition, there are things in breast milk that you will not find in formula. You will see those listed over here in this chart. And it's really important to remember that if you are using formula, it can be used medically if it's medically necessary. That doesn't mean just because you introduce formula in the beginning of your baby's life that you cannot go back to 100% breast milk. So these are some of the things that breast milk contains that formula does not. Growth factors, anti-parasites, anti-allergies. So you just want to remember that breast milk is the perfect match for developing digestive system of your newborn baby. So the American Pediatrics Association suggests that babies are exclusively breastfed within the first 6 months of life. And what exclusively breastfed means that there's no water, no solid foods, no rice cereal, no formula, and that's the baby will only get 100% breast milk for the first 6 months. And by doing this, it can save your baby's life by reducing diseases like we talked about previously. It also ensures for a good digestive system. It helps with bonding with the mother and the child, and it also can help with you returning back to your pre-pregnancy size. It helps with your healing process. So I like to show this chart because everyone is different when it comes to breast, but that does not mean that you cannot breastfeed. So the first nipple you see here in the chart is an everted nipple right here. And then you see a flatter nipple and an inverted nipple. So if you do have a flat or inverted nipple, it doesn't mean that you can't breastfeed. I do suggest that you may talk to a lactation consultant if that is the case, but there's something called a nipple shield. And the nipple shield can really help give your breast that, your nipple a little extra depth. And I'm going to show you one here if you want to look at the screen. And they come in these little cases. Sometimes they may give them to you at the hospital, but this is what it looks like. It's really clear and thin and flimsy. And it pops right up onto the nipple to give it a little extra depth. You're going to flip it like a hat, place it onto the nipple, and I hope you can see it there, but it gives a little extra depth. And that way, if you do have an inverted or a flat nipple, you can still breastfeed your baby. Here is a very good diagram of why we need to have a deep latch. You're going to hear a lot of people when they're talking to you about breastfeeding, about getting a deep latch. And a deep latch is extremely important. And the reason why it's so important is because a couple of reasons is one, if you look here, this is where the milk ducts lie right here. So you want your baby to get a deep latch so they can be massaging those areas to help move the milk out. So the other reason why you want to get a deep latch, it helps your baby to transfer more milk, but also if your baby's right here on the nipple, that's going to cause discomfort to you. So getting that deep latch, your baby will get more milk, which will help you with your milk production and also decrease the amount of discomfort you may have with breastfeeding. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of maintaining your milk supply and how to get that milk supply going. So the best way to have a good milk supply is by removing milk. The more milk you remove, the more milk you make. So when you are breastfeeding and you're getting that deep latch like we talked about, you want to remove the milk from your breast more frequently. So it's going to be 8 to 12 times a day that you will be breastfeeding your baby. And you want to make sure that your baby is removing that milk adequately. If for some reason the baby is not removing the milk adequately, like your breasts still feel full, or you feel like you still have some milk in there, you want to hand express or pump that milk out to help with removing the milk so that your body can continue to make milk. So to ensure proper milk production, make sure your baby is nursing efficiently. Use breast massage and breast compressions as well. So a breast compression, if you look at the screen, is just squeezing like this during the feeding to help your baby to get more milk out. You also can massage your breast during the feeding to help your baby to transfer more milk. And getting that deep latch will also help your baby to transfer more milk. You want to offer both sides. So the first side, we call that the main course. The second side would be dessert. And one of the tricks I like to tell families is to go ahead when the baby wakes up, don't necessarily change their diaper right away unless it's, it's really soiled. Go ahead and latch their baby when the baby first wake up. And then change the diaper in between breasts. That way, if baby gets sleepy at the first breast, that will wake the baby up, and then offer the second side. And remember, the second side is dessert. So sometimes, just like us, sometimes we want dessert, sometimes we don't. Sometimes your baby might not want the second side. So that first milk that you will have in your breast and that you have after 14 weeks gestation is called colostrum. This is a very healthy, thick, full of nutrients milk. Is the best thing for your baby's digestive system. We call it liquid gold. It's your baby's first immunization shot. So even if you do not breastfeed your baby past the first week, just giving your baby this colostrum in the beginning can be a huge strengthening for their immune system. Also, when your baby is first born, they have lots of folds in their stomach, similar to what an adult with irritable bowel syndrome would look like. So what colostrum does, because it's so thick, it coats the baby's stomach and it helps to close up those folds, which helps to start your baby's digestion off really well. Colostrum also has a natural laxative in it. So when you're pregnant, your baby is floating in that amniotic sac, all the fluid. And so there's meconium inside of your baby's stomach, which is definitely needed when your baby's in your womb. But once your baby is born, your baby no longer needs that meconium. So the colostrum has a laxative in it to help move that meconium out. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. Colostrum also helps to stabilize your baby's blood sugar. So it's really great if you can give this to your baby. And if you are pregnant, you can start doing some hand expression after 37, 38 weeks. And if you want to collect the colostrum, you can, you don't have to. But by doing this prenatal hand expression, studies have shown that women have a better milk supply when their babies are born. When your baby is first born, another thing that can really help with your milk supply is also skin to skin. It also helps with bonding, and it's also regulates your baby's breathing, your baby's blood sugars, body temperature, heart rate, and it's standard in most baby-friendly hospitals. So anyone can do skin to skin with your baby. So if the mommy is not available, then dad can do skin to skin, grandma can do skin to skin. It's really soothing for the baby, and it's not just for when baby is first born. It can also be used to soothe the baby in between feedings or right before a feeding if they get too fussy. Another way to make sure that you maintain your milk supply is to make sure that in the first week of postpartum that you are breastfeeding your baby or removing milk at least 12 times a day. And by doing this, you're going to ensure a great milk supply, because when you first have your baby, the prolactin receptor sites are wide open, and so the oxytocin needs to plug in. And once it's plugged in, it's going to trigger your body to make more milk. And women that tend to breastfeed their babies for at least that 12 times a day in that first week tend to have enough milk supply for at the 3-month mark. They don't see that a drop at all. So after your colostrum comes in, and when your baby's first born, your milk is going to transition from colostrum to a transitional milk. And it's going to stay in this transitional stage for about 1 to 2 weeks. Like colostrum was very thick and yellowish, and then it's about, it comes out really thick. So most of the time you can't pump colostrum, you have to hand express it. And that milk transitions around the 3rd to 5th day. And this transitional milk is mixed of colostrum and mature milk. And this is triggered by the drop in your hormones. So the way that your body is made to, when you're pregnant, your body produces the colostrum naturally because you're pregnant. Once you deliver the baby and your placenta, that triggers your body to say, oh, baby's on board. Now we're going to need to produce that mature milk, and that milk will come into play around the 3rd to 5th day. And this is another time when women may see engorgement. And so you want to make sure that you're feeding your baby often, that 12 times, at least 8. But if you can get in 12 times a day, that's going to help to reduce that engorgement. So the next milk that will transition again about the 2nd week of life is going to be that mature milk. And this is when it's completely always going to be demand and supply, supply and demand. So you want to make sure that you are doing those 8 to 12 feedings a day in order to make sure that your baby is getting enough and that you keep a milk supply. So the average daily intake plateaus around 3 weeks old, and that's going to be about 24 ounces per day. So your baby will take anywhere from 3 to 4 ounces per feeding. And just to let you know a little bit about breast milk, it does change with your baby's age. It changes based on if your baby has an illness, if you have an illness, the time of day. So at night, your breast milk actually has more melatonin in it to help your baby to rest. If a mom was to have a baby in, say, Alaska, that baby would have more fat. That breast milk would have more fat in it than, say, a mom in Florida. If that same mom moved to Florida, her breast milk would change to have more water in it. So it changes constantly. It's changing all the time. And so that's just a little facts I like to tell about breast milk. Now, 90% of first-time moms have enough milk, and the second-time moms tend to make more milk than they did the first time. So this is a chart that I always like to share because it gives us an idea of the baby's stomach size, but it also lets you know when your baby's having a growth spurt. So day one, when your baby is first born, that colostrum is very thick and its perfect size is the perfect amount for their perfect small little stomachs. So your baby's stomach is the size of a cherry. They can only take anywhere from 5 to 7 milliliters or 1 to 1/4 teaspoons. And then around day 3, your baby has a growth spurt, has their very first growth spurt, and you will notice that your baby is a little more alert on day 3. And so when this growth spurt happens, your baby's stomach changes from a size of a cherry to the size of a strawberry, and now baby can take in about an ounce. And then around 7 to 10 days, your baby has another growth spurt. This one, you may feel like you're constantly feeding. It's going to be lots of cluster feeding. And this is a time when your baby can take in a little bit more, almost 2 ounces per feeding. I like to show this chart in the event that you have to supplement. You know exactly how much to give your baby, but you won't know if you're at the breast. So it's just really to kind of give you an idea of the growth spurt times, as well as if you have to supplement. And then the next major growth spurt that happens is between 3 to 4 weeks. And this is when your baby's stomach grows and it's about the size of a kiwi. And when this happens, now your baby can take in anywhere from 3 to 5 ounces per feeding. And these are all per feeding. So I mentioned cluster feeding and growth spurts. So cluster feeding is something that can really throw a breastfeeding parent off, because when your baby, when you start to learn your baby and you learn your baby's rhythm and all of that, then cluster feeding will happen. And again, that's going to be at 7 to 10 days. You'll see that again at 3 weeks. It happens again at 6 weeks. It happens again at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and again at 12 months. So these are all growth spurts that your baby will have, and which can include lots of cluster feeding. And what cluster feeding would look like, your baby may have done 2, maybe 3 hours in between feedings, and now all of a sudden you feed the baby, 20 minutes later, feeding cues. You feed the baby, an hour later, feeding cues. You feed the baby, hungry again, your baby just constantly wanting to feed. And this can last anywhere from 3 to 5 days. And it can really throw parents off because they think that there's something going on with their milk supply. But what's actually happening is because of the growth spurt, your baby's coming to the breast more often, because remember that demand and supply coming into the breast more often to help your body to make more milk. So it's very systematically and biologically put into place for your baby's growth. So don't be thrown off. I like to always remind, growth spurts happen and you're not losing your milk, you're making more. Also with growth spurts come a lot of fussiness. So I do suggest that you learn different soothing techniques to help your baby work through those growth spurts. So what to expect in the first 24 hours when your baby is first born. So let's talk a little bit about that. We talked about the growth, about the golden hour and that liquid gold. So your baby is going to be really awake when they're first born. And this is when lots of times when it's good to get that first latch is in that first hour. And then your baby may be really sleepy. And guess what? It's okay in that first day if you don't get in those 8 to 12 feedings. Get some rest while your baby's resting if you can. A lot of people will tell you that, and it's not always easy to do, but do your best to rest and maybe not sleep. Now, you want to make sure you're doing lots of skin to skin in the first 24 hours. That's going to help with your milk production. And I like to say, if you're keeping the baby as skin to skin, they're right in the restaurant, so they can get their food. Now, the next change you're going to see is that 2 to 3 day change that we talked about already, where you may have a little bit of engorgement as well. You want to avoid super long feeds during this transition. So you may do 15 minutes on one side, 15 minutes on the other side, and lots of breast massaging. And that's just in the first 3 days. That's what you want to do. So you may time it a little bit then. After that, I don't want you to do any timing. You're only going to watch the baby. You're going to make sure that you're paying attention to how the baby's body language changes and for the feeding. You are again going to be doing a lot of breast massage and lots of skin to skin. Now, once you get past that 3 to 5 day mark, this is when you're going to give a full feed on one side and then offer the second side for dessert. So you want to alternate both breasts, always alternating. Again, if baby doesn't take the second breast, that's okay. You want to make sure you're getting in those 8 to 12 feedings per day. And you want to do lots of, again, breast massaging and breast compressions during this time as well. This is going to really help with any engorgement you may be experiencing. This slide here is one of my favorite slides, and the reason why is because a breastfeeding parent really needs support. It's real important to make sure you have the support system around you to help breastfeeding be successful. So some of the things that a support person can do is to bring easy to eat foods, things that you can eat with your hands, granola bars, nuts, crackers, things like that. It's easy. A support person can do skin to skin, can soothe the baby, also can bring water to you. You want to make sure you have a water bottle, something that has a straw that you don't have to pour into your mouth, because it'll be a lot easier to handle that with a newborn. Also, a breastfeeding support person can do encouragement, lots of words of encouragement, attend the lactation education and support sessions, prepare the pump, and also those diaper changes. So this chart shows you feeding cues. It's really important to understand that these cues on the day 1 through 3 aren't really feeding cues. They're biological cues. But after that time, it's really feeding cues and hunger cues that your baby will have. So what your baby's going to do when it's time to feed your baby, you're going to notice that your baby's sucking on their hands, then may turn their head from side to side. These are some of the earlier cues. When baby's getting really hungry, then they start stretching, opening up, now loud smacking sounds. And then the late cue is crying. You don't want to wait until your baby's crying to latch your baby. It's important to catch them on those early cues, because it's easier to latch a baby that's calmer and just opening their mouth versus a crying baby. So if your baby does start to cry, then you want to go ahead and do some skin to skin. Offer them your pinky pad side up to suck on for soothing. Make sure it's a clean finger. And it doesn't have to be the clean finger of the breastfeeding parent. It could be anyone to soothe the baby, as long as it's a clean finger. And then once baby is calm, then latch the baby. So these are breastfeeding positions. I like this chart because it gives a nice little overview. Except for that last one on the end, I have a different picture for that I will show you. But here is the cradle position. Now, I say some of the positions are parent-led, some are baby-led, some are pro positions, and some are beginner positions. So cradle position is going to be what I would consider a pro position. It's once you've gotten breastfeeding down packed and you're over that initial hump, it can be one of the easiest positions to use for your baby. Now, a beginner position and a parent-led position is going to be cross cradle, and then the football hole is also a good beginner position and a parent-led position, and that's going to also allow you to control the baby a little bit more when latching. The laid back position, this one, you usually can nail it when baby's first born and you're doing that initial golden hour skin to skin. But sometimes once you get home, it's really hard to get that laid back position just right, where baby is horizontal and where you're latching the baby, vertical, and you're latching the baby while they're straight up and down. But if you do manage that one, it's really a nice position to get. And then there's the sideline position. And this is the sideline position. You can't do any type of breastfeeding with your elbow up in the air like the other picture. So it's more like this. Now I'm going to stop sharing so that you can, I'm going to demo the positions for you so that you can get a better idea of what they look like. And if you want to put put the camera on presenter view, that will make it a lot easier for you to see. So the first position we saw there was the cradle position. Again, this is more of a pro position, but with all the positions, you want to make sure that your baby has a perfect alignment, and that's going to be ear, shoulder, hips in a nice line. You want to make sure your baby is facing your breast, so you're going to be tummy to tummy with your baby, your tummy to the baby's tummy. You also want to make sure that your baby doesn't ever have their head turned, because we can't eat like that, and neither can your baby. So you want to make sure they're facing their food. So cradle position, you will have baby cradled in. And the reason why this is challenging with the newborn is because they're so wiggly, their muscle tone hasn't developed yet. And so it can be really difficult to do this. Maybe around 3 to 6 weeks, you can manage doing the cradle position. But you're gonna also support your breast, nipple to nose, and then bring your baby to the breast. Always bringing the baby to the breast. You want to make sure the baby opens really wide, gets a nice opening. And when baby opens wide, that's when you bring them to the breast. You don't want to have their mouth like closed a little bit, because that's going to cause a shallow latch. And to get that deep latch, we're going to make them wide open. So that's the cradle position. The next one, which is one of my favorites, is the cross cradle. You're going to support your breast like this and hold baby, always holding baby at the back of the head this way, not like this, because they don't like that. They push back and then it's harder to get the latch. You want to hold them like this. And then you want to sit up straight when you're breastfeeding. The two positions, postures, sitting up straight or leaning back. So the great thing about cross cradle is that you can sit up straight, wait for baby. You know, you're going to put that nipple to nose, tickle the top lip. When baby opens wide, you're going to bring the baby to the breast. And when you do that, like this, bring the baby to the breast. And once you have baby brought to the breast, you can then lean back, and you have the benefits of being able to relax. It frees up your hands, and it also helps with bringing the gravity to help babies keep that deep latch. The other position is the football hold. Same thing, tummy to tummy, sitting up straight, bring baby to breast, and then lean back. Once you're leaning back, then you just keep your baby there. You may want to have pillows under your arms to support. If you do decide to get breastfeeding pillows, you want to make sure that they're supporting your arms, not you're laying the baby on there. You don't want to lean forward. That's going to make you have a shallow latch. The other position we had on this chart was the laid back position. This one is where the baby is vertical this way, and baby's going to be coming up this way and latching, waiting for that opening. And this is more about baby-led latching. They latch themselves on really well this way. And it can be very comfortable to do this while laying in the bed, laying with your legs stretched out on the couch. And the other one was sideline, and that one you want to make sure, same thing, clear off all of the pillows and blankets and comforters off the bed, make sure it's clear and safe. And then you're going to have baby nipple to nose, tummy to tummy, and then you're just going to kind of give your baby a little nudge and they will latch on. So I have a couple of videos I'm going to show you so you can have an idea what a good latch looks like. Before I do that, I want everyone to take their tongue and put it to the roof of their mouth. And you feel those ridges there. Now take your tongue and put it to the back of the mouth. And it's a soft palate there. That is where your nipple needs to land in the baby's mouth, in that soft palate. So let's watch a video that shows that.
Behind the baby's gums are ridges. Behind the ridges is the baby's hard palate. When your baby takes your breast into his mouth, if your nipple lands near the front of his mouth, your nipple will press against his hard palate. This is called a shallow latch, which can cause discomfort for you as he breastfeeds. If your baby breastfeeds with a shallow latch repeatedly, the friction and pressure may eventually cause you pain or even skin damage. Farther back in your baby's mouth, the palate changes from hard to soft. Some call the area near this soft palate the comfort zone. To get a better idea of where this is, use your own tongue to find your soft palate. When your baby takes your breast deeply into his mouth and latches on so that your nipple lands in the comfort zone, there is no undue friction or pressure as your baby breastfeeds. Latching on within the comfort zone is where breastfeeding is most comfortable for you and most effective for your baby.
Okay. The next video is going to show you what it looks like in person for a baby that's latching properly. Second here. So see how the baby opens wide and bring baby to the breast. And that is what a deep latch looks like. Baby opens wide and bring baby to the breast. Okay. So now let's talk about how to know if your baby's getting enough. What goes in must come out, and that's how you know how your baby's getting enough. So on day 1, your baby should have 1 dirty diaper, 1 wet diaper. On day 2, it should be 2 and 2. Day 3, 3 and 3. Day 4, 4 and 4. Some babies will stop at 4 and 4, but it really should be at 5 and 5, and then your baby may slow down as they get older, but they will generally increase. It could be every feeding your baby is having a wet and dirty diaper. Now, the reason why I like this chart is because if for some reason it's day 5 and you only have 2 wet diapers and 3 dirty diapers, then that's telling you that your baby's not getting enough. So you want to use this as a baseline, as the minimum of what your baby should have. The other thing to look at to know if your baby's getting enough is to look at what the colors of their bowels look like. So remember I talked about the meconium, so that has to come out, and that's going to come out day 1 and 2, and it's going to be really black and tarry, a really dark color. And then day 2 and 4, it's going to transition to a greenish brown. 3 and 5 is going to transition from a green to a more yellow brown, and then it's going to go to like a Dijon mustard color by day 5. If perchance it's day 3 and you still are having meconium, or around day 3 you still have meconium, that's a sign that your baby's not getting enough as well. So most babies lose about 5 to 7% of their birth weight. If your baby is losing more than 7%, then you may want to consider getting some rest. You may have to do some supplementation, but our goal is to get a baby back to their birth weight by 10 to 14 days. If by chance your baby has to be supplemented, if your baby has jaundice, or if they're saying that your baby has lost more than 10% of their weight, then you can supplement with your own breast milk. Doing hand expression and spoon feeding and finger feeding is typically the easiest way. And you can also feed your baby with a spoon or a cup or a dropper or a syringe. And you can do pace bottle feeding. And so all of these will help the baby to go from breast to bottle. And that's really important that baby can go from breast to bottle so that it doesn't compromise breastfeeding in the beginning. A bottle tends to have a very fast flow. So you want to make sure you're pacing the baby out. So I'm going to show you a quick video on paced bottle feeding and finger feeding so that you know how to do those. And the importance of paced bottle feeding is not just for breastfeeding either. It helps to reduce childhood obesity because it helps the baby know when they're naturally satiated. And this is going to be a quick video. So 1 second here. Just going to show it towards the end.
Get your hands down here. We want to tickle baby's lips until they open, and we want to get that nipple all the way in. And if baby starts going, let's see here, if we get him to go, so see how he's gulping right there? Gulp, gulp, gulp. We don't want that. That is too fast. So if that happens, we slow that flow by either dropping. If we have to drop it so far that there's no milk in the nipple, that's fine. The air won't hurt him. But see how he paused? And then when he starts sucking again, he put that milk up into the nipple. Just so he can go suck, suck, swallow, pause.
Okay. And that's paced bottle feeding, and that's really good to do with your newborns if you have to supplement. Another thing you could do is this finger feeding, and I'm gonna speed it up just a little bit so you can see it.
I place the baby to the right of the mother so that the mother feels safe and isn't afraid she's gonna drop the baby. Okay, so the right hand is in the baby's mouth. You can see that the baby takes the mom almost to the second knuckle in the finger. Now we'll pick up the dropper. The mom places the dropper right next to the finger. I personally use a glass dropper because glass tastes better than plastic, and it's got a little beautiful tapered tip, and you put the tapered tip right next to the finger. The mom drops consistently. The baby feels the skin, and the baby's tongue is flat like a piece of wood, just like the tongue needs to be during breastfeeding. Go a little bit faster.
So that's finger feeding. And those are good to use if you have to supplement your baby or if your baby's having trouble latching. These are things that you can do to be able to practice on breastfeeding. And remember, breastfeeding I always tell parents, breastfeeding, it takes 3 Ps: practice, persistence, and patience. And the last thing I want to talk to you all about is, creating a nesting area. This is multiple areas in your house that makes breastfeeding more comfortable. You can have your water and snacks and breastfeeding pillows in this area. Washcloths to help give your breast a little lift. Your phone charger. Those are all good to have there. Maternal nutrition. You want to just be mindful that you're eating healthy, but everything that was off the table during pregnancy is back on the table, so you can have whatever it is you like to eat. You want to have a drink every now and then. Breastfeeding and alcohol is okay. If you're sober enough to drive, you're sober enough to breastfeed. You can have a glass of wine right after you breastfeed your baby, and then wait those 2 to 3 hours, and then you can breastfeed your baby. There's no need to pump and dump. Then if you want to start pumping, you want to do that at least after 3 weeks. If you're going to bottle feed, you want to use a slow flow nipple. And breast milk storage, you want to store breast milk is good for 4 to 5 hours on room temperature. It's 5 days in the refrigerator, and it can be good up to 6 months in a deep freezer. And for nursing bras, I suggest getting a cami instead of the bras just to start out, because your breast is going to be making so many changes. And if you're interested in using a pacifier, that's perfectly fine. Some people say introduce it after 3 weeks, but if you're going to use one, make sure you offer it after the baby has been fed so you're not missing feeding cues. Also, make sure the baby is latching on the pacifier with their lips flanged and making that deep latch as well. Breastfeeding pillows, I like the My Breast Friend, but there's also just regular pillows. You can use any type of pillows you like. And know that you do have breastfeeding rights, and most insurances will allow you to get some type of pump. If you need help with that, reach out to us. We'll be glad to assist you with getting your pumps. And knowing your breastfeeding rights, most employers, if they have 50 or more employees, they should have a space for you to be able to pump and store your milk. And so, and it's also wherever it's legal for you and your baby to be, it's legal for you to breastfeed. Those are just some of my pet peeves. So I like to mention those in my classes. You want to make sure that you get support if you need support. If your baby's not getting enough milk, you want to reach out to a lactation consultant. If your breastfeeding is hurting, again, it should feel like tugging. Your breast may be sore, but it should not be clenching, hurting, scratching pain. And if you have any questions whatsoever, always reach out. And this is my contact information here. We also do support groups every Tuesday. You can reach out by emailing me or going to my Facebook page is Aquaba Wellness as well. And on the screen is the phone number. And we do that at 12 noon. We do it virtually on Zoom. And we do some in person periodically, but we also have the Zoom available for you. I want to thank you all for listening. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Dr. Kua.
Thank you, sister. And we want to open it up for questions if anyone has any questions of you. It's a wonderful presentation.
Thank you. I was speed talking.
So, Shaka or Laverne or Kua, if you all have any questions, if you want to put it in the chat box, you can do that. Or if you want to just take yourself off mute and ask any questions that you have.
I don't have any questions, but I do want to thank you for the information. I felt that it was very beneficial as a birth worker for me to be able to better assist moms. I'm not the breastfeeding expert, but I am a breastfeeding advocate. I feel that everyone should at least try. So thank you again for just some of the tips and pointers to be able to go back over, because I noticed one of the things that I've found, especially in Black moms, as soon as we hear that baby get frantic and cry, they automatically panic. And when they panic, everything just goes left because they're like, my baby's not getting enough, my baby's hungry. And so I always have to tell them, be patient and relax, because if you let them get you in a panic, then it's gonna go wrong. And then you're gonna feel like, oh my God, I have to hurry up and just give them the bottle. Or one of the things that I didn't know, I guess, is that gulping. I thought gulping was good. Even though I'm a mom and all of my kids are older, I did not know that that was wrong. So thank you for the information and thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you so much for supporting moms with breastfeeding, because that support and knowledge can take them a long way. Sometimes it's just knowing a little bit of information that can make a difference in their breastfeeding experience.
Thank you for that, Shaka. And Laverne, do you have any question or comment that you'd like to share?
I don't. Just thank you very, very much for everything. It was great. It was informational. And it's actually going to help me a lot working towards becoming a birth worker. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, once again, a beautiful presentation, and it really took me back. My children certainly are grown now, but I pioneered pumping back in the day at my job, because they had La Leche League at the time, was an organization that supported breastfeeding moms, and you can get the pump. But I was the first pregnant woman at this particular job, and it was a small nonprofit that had been around since 1918, actually. But, you know, the first African American to work for that company, and also first breastfeeding mom. So I had a closet and I brought my little pump. And so I'm just very appreciative that
you're here and providing this wonderful knowledge for us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. And anytime I get to talk about breastfeeding, it makes my day.
Well, we're gonna, as far as a life of peace as well, we do have an assignment for you who are participating. I'm putting it in the chat box, and I'm also gonna explain it. We'd like for you, there will be a packet of information that a life of peace will send out, but in order to receive that information, we would appreciate it if you would write a 1 to 2 paragraph summary about how you will use this information from today's presentation with Morenike, and either for yourself or for your clients, and submit this assignment to the email addresses that I have in the chat box, akua@alifeofpeace.org, or myself, Carolyn, at alifeofpeace.org. So we definitely, I'm going to be making a trip down to Savannah now that I know that Morenike is down there. In fact, right when she started her presentation, I text a young woman I work with who is pregnant, and I'm like, you got to connect with this sister. So just want to thank you again.
Welcome. Yes, please come to Savannah. We'd love to have you. We don't have enough. I'm working on getting us enough Black birth workers, but we just really don't have enough support here. So anytime anyone wants to come and share information, by all means, please do.
Thank you so much again. And I want to thank everyone. I'm going to stop the recording. And are there any parting words, Sister Morenike, before we conclude?
No, just know that, your body is made to do this. If you're having trouble, reach out to get that support and get that assistance so that you can reach your breastfeeding goals. And breastfeeding can look any kind of way. That's something I always like to tell families. It doesn't have to always be feeding at the breast. It can look so many different ways. So find your way to be able to do it.
Ashe. Well, I just want to thank you again. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.